Welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. My name is Joel Goldberg. Happy Friday, everyone. We have made it to the end of another week and hopefully a chance to enjoy the weekend. We're, of course, still dealing with the pandemic. We're dealing with a lot of challenges right now in our country and the protests, and certainly these are unique times. They're tough times, but continue to bring you this podcast, hopefully different perspectives, different stories. It's been a good week. Started out with Angel McGee on Monday. That was episode number 49, and we talked about the Kansas City Urban Youth Academy, but also Angel's take as an African-American woman on what's going on in this world, in her community, and her perspective. And that was really a great way for me to be able to start out the week. And we're going to end it on a totally different topic today, but one that I know that is important and special to many of us. So we'll get to that in a minute, but a big thanks to my friends at Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. I've got to stop over there a little bit later today to do a little bit of business, but appreciative of their support. And I just saw a message from my friends at Casey Cattle Company. I want to see if I could take a look at the email on the newsletter that I got from them. But essentially what it said was that Casey Cattle Company, here it is, the butcher shop is restocked. Grab your favorites now. The Wagyu Weekender, that's their newsletter. And so they're ready to go. CaseyCattleCompany.com. We had the Casey Cattle Company bacon cheeseburger brats last night, and they were, as always, spectacular. And all the updates, too, whether it's their newsletter or social media, you can do at CaseyCattleCompany.com. And I'm visiting all the sponsors. Earlier in the week, popped in on Wednesday to JJ's Wine and Spirits. It was Wine Wednesday, 15% off all bottles of wine. They really take great care of their customers 7 days a week. And they are on the southwest corner of Antioch and College in Overland Park. So I hope you will visit JJ's Wine and Spirits. I could also give you this promo from a personal standpoint. If you are needing a good veterinarian for your pets, my personal recommendation, and this has been the case for 12 years now, has been Martin City Animal Hospital. And I think any of us that are pet owners, we certainly know that these are unique times, not just for us, but for our pets. And Dr. Libby Robertson, who is the owner and veterinarian at Martin City Animal Hospital, can shed light on that, because I know she's got two dogs that are dealing with this pandemic, if that's the right way to put it. I've got two that are dealing with this pandemic. She happens to be a good friend and neighbor, and more or less importantly, also our veterinarian. So, Dr. Libby, thanks for joining the show. And I sort of joke when I say, well, how are the pets doing during a pandemic? But look, this is a different world for us. And I know that when pets see us acting differently, they can get stressed out too. I know they're taking the dogs a lot of walks. I know that they're seeing us more than they're used to. Am I making completely something wackadoo out of this, or have pets been affected by this too?
No, it was funny. The first 2 weeks of the pandemic, we saw so many pet injuries, paw pad wearing and limping and toenails broken because everyone was home. So they were playing ball more. And then we had a lot of people who were like, oh, my cat's not acting right, because they were actually home to see their cat. Now cats are not super happy all the time about everyone being home. We make jokes about the cats are writing letters on going back to work, and the dogs are going, please don't leave us. But it's, the stress in people translates to our pets, and being home more, we're seeing, just a lot more interaction with our pets.
Well, I think you're right. For the most part, the dogs are happy, maybe a little bit more tired, but they typically don't complain about that. But also, and this is a whole other thing in terms of psychology. It's not really where I was going to go, but think about what these pets have done for so many of us as we have needed comfort during these times, right?
Well, and especially with all of the isolation and not being able to confide in our friends or be close to our family members, there is a huge link between humans and pets, and that human-pet interaction and mental wellness. So I've been really happy to help some of my families find new pets to help them get through this time. And Also just making sure they're taking best care of their pets so that they're there for them.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean it's just been really interesting to walk around and everyone can attest to this, walking around their neighborhoods, and you're seeing more dogs going out for walks. You're seeing more people, for that matter,
Right.
go out for walks. But I want to backtrack, because so much of what I talk to people on this podcast is about their business, how things have changed
Yeah.
during the pandemic. Uh, Forget about dogs or cats or pet social distancing. You have to be able to social distance within, your clinic at Martin City Animal Hospital. So how has that affected business for you and the way you've gone about things the last 3 months?
A lot. Our professional organizations, as well as like FDA, USDA, CDC, have been great on keeping us really on the forefront of what's going on with COVID-19. And so, very early on, we were making huge changes to how we serve our customers so that we can stay open. As you know, my building is teeny tiny, and so social distancing within these walls is nearly impossible, as is most vet clinics. We don't have the luxury of big square footage like our big box stores. And so with that, we immediately switched to curbside only care. So we go out and get the pets from the cars. We're trying to limit our direct interaction with clients, which has posed a lot of challenges emotionally for our pets, or for our owners. The pets surprisingly have done very well. But our owners, they feel a disconnect with our service, which is always disappointing. And how we communicate over the phone or going out and talking car side. But so far, knock on wood, we have been healthy and been able to stay that way. And so, with the size of my business, we're going to actually stay curbside probably through the summer. I know some clinics are starting to allow one owner in and they're going straight to an exam room, but they're still having to take the pets away from the owners to keep that social distancing, to limit that face to face interaction with the client. So, as a whole profession, it has changed drastically. And we were pretty quick to pull the trigger on that just because of our size, our staff size and stuff. We can't do shift work. We can't have half the shift here, half the staff one day and half another.
Yeah, and your office, and this is probably true for a lot of clinics and a lot of vets. I mean, there aren't options to suddenly say, well, let's spread out more and do this or do that. These things
Right.
were set up to be able to handle, the exams and the pets in the way that you do them. And then I guess too, I mean, it's really changed in terms of who you need to see when you need to see them. Very much, I guess, like a doctor's office too. I mean, there's some things that you'd like to get done that just are going to have to be put on hold. So what's sort of been over these
Right.
few months, and maybe things are easing up a little bit, but what's been essential and what hasn't?
So initially, we just saw sort of emergency or sick animals. They had diarrhea or an ear infection or a cut. We stopped all elective surgeries for the first really 2 months. We're just starting to get those done again. So emergency surgeries only. The lab who swallowed the sock, we did surgery. But if a dog was about to go into heat, we would do a spay. But otherwise, we pushed everything back, and now we're playing catch up. Now we can't see straight because we're trying to get people taken care of, making sure vaccines are done, keeping dogs legal and protected. Because now people are out with the walks and the social stuff. You're starting to see a lot more dog
Mm.
interaction, so we've got to keep them protected.
How often, by the way, do you see the dog that ate the sock?
We see at least one good foreign body a quarter. Now we're a pretty small clinic. Sometimes all of a sudden we'll have three in a month, and I think probably the the best surgery I ever did was a kitten who got into a spool of thread and literally had thread coming out the mouth and out the tush. And there was over 50 centimeters of thread throughout this poor kitty's body. So, that's an emergency surgery. That kitty goes to
Yeah.
surgery within hours. But yeah, I've seen some stuff.
And and true or false, I've got the only dog that eats underwear.
False. I would say your old dog was the only one I ever saw eat a battery from a
Yeah.
computer, but the underwear is pretty common. Maybe not with the frequency of Maggie, but
Yeah. Thankfully, our old dog, who is no longer with us, survived the battery. So she made it about almost
Right.
16 years. Maggie, on the other hand, who is some version of a black lab, we don't really know what she is, has a tendency to eat underwear, and we generally don't know about it until it shows up in the backyard. Um,
Right. But
so that hasn't
great,
been your problem.
thankfully.
Yeah, that hasn't been your problem. That's just been our problem. So hey, the thing
I'm
that
glad
the
you don't
thing
call me to pick that up.
I got teenagers, which means that I'm probably no. It means Susan's probably doing it. Okay, so I
Right.
that's a first on this podcast, and that's okay. We can kind of cover whatever we want. I know one of the questions I was hearing early on, and it seemed kind of silly, was could could pets pass on COVID? Are they contagious? How does it work? I mean, I don't think any of us have sat there and worried about getting a kiss from their dog or cuddling up with their dogs. And I
Right.
don't know if any of us could handle it if we had to social distance our
Right.
pets. But is there anything at all um, to that in terms of this virus?
Yeah, it's been interesting. There's been about maybe 10 cases worldwide of domestic pets, dogs and cats, testing positive for the SARS-CoV-2 virus.
Hmm.
That being said, all of those pets had owners who were symptomatic and positive. And so the way the diseases are showing up, it appears that the dogs and cats are catching it from their owners, but cannot then pass it back to humans. We also had the big cats at the Bronx Zoo that I think it was the Bronx Zoo that caught SARS from their zookeeper who was positive and was unknowingly positive, was working before she got sick. And so there is evidence that our big cats are going to be susceptible to this disease and can maybe pass it from cat to cat, but once again, not back to people. So there was no evidence of transmission back. So they seem to be an end host, if you will. There's a lot of studies on what animals worldwide can catch this. We're looking at marine creatures right now, dolphins, and even potentially whales. Are they susceptible? And then pangolins and bats, which are the two suspicious creatures for where did this come from. But the virus that humans are getting appears to be a little different than both the bats and the pangolins. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. If you have coronavirus in your family, the recommendation is to keep the pets away just like you would your kids or your spouse, because they can carry it on their fur, on the bridge of their nose, but luckily they don't seem to be able to then pass it back to other people.
These are the little things that you've got to know about. I think
I
they're
know, it's
probably,
crazy.
in the midst of all of the things that we're trying to figure out and learn. One of those is that I think we're all trying to just figure out how to interact with each other, and that's
Right.
a whole nother discussion too. I know we have in our neighborhood spent enough time distancing with each other, and others are getting back to it quicker, others are slower. It's all different. So I know this sounds crazy, but it's not. One of the topics that's on everyone's minds right now is getting back to work, or getting back to the office, I
Right.
should say. And
Right.
some are starting to ease back in. Everybody's got different plans, and that's they're all going to be different. I know some offices that still won't go back for months. I know that if and when I go back to baseball in July, I won't see a locker room this year. I mean, there'll be different rules and different ways we go about things. But the sort of weird question here is this: as our pets, especially those dogs, you alluded to the cats are like, okay, come on,
Yeah. See
enough
you
already.
later.
Give me a break. Too much social time. Right? Cats are like, if anybody watches Curb Your Enthusiasm and Larry David, I think Larry David has to be one of the happiest people in the world about this pandemic. Not because the loss of lives or because the loss of money, but because I think I think he even did an interview. He genuinely was excited about not having to come up with excuses of not seeing people anymore, and that's
Right.
just his sense of humor. Cats are going to be like the opposite, right? They're gonna be
Right.
like, can everybody get back to work, please, and leave me alone? But if these dogs are suddenly used to not being in their crates and not being
Hmm.
locked up, and they're so adaptable, right? I mean, I know we all feel, but oh gosh, are we leaving them in there too long? They roll with whatever, they really
Right.
do for the most part. Um, will there be a mental toll here as we go back to work and in the fall school, and suddenly what was 24/7 people being home maybe becomes 6-8 hours at a time not home?
Right. No, and we're already seeing it. I'm seeing it with clients who are starting to even go to the store and they're seeing their dogs start to
Mm,
react to them leaving, or they're reacting to the environment outside differently. Like I have dogs who are suddenly starting to bark more because their owners, now there's a lot of tension in families and stress. And obviously the news daily has been stressful on everyone, but the key is to try to do some transitioning. Don't cold
mm,
turkey go from being home 24/7 to suddenly working 12-hour days if you have pets. And some cats will absolutely miss their owners because they miss getting the treats and the interaction and the cuddling on the laps, and suddenly we're not taking naps as much anymore. But the big thing is try to take baby steps. If your dog hasn't been in the crate for 3 weeks, I would start doing a little crate time, even if you're home. Maybe you're working on the office in the other room. Start trying to do some
mm,
separation. And it was interesting. Our makers of Frontline paired up with Spotify. There's
mm.
actually a 5-hour playlist of music. There's research showing that certain rhythms of music and certain beats and sounds can be soothing to dogs and cats. And there is actually a dog playlist on Spotify. And so, there's definitely the behaviorists are going to be busy when we transition back.
So my question on this, well, a couple things. One, does my and for people that don't know, Libby and my wife are very good friends. Well, we are too, but sometimes you two may talk more than she and I talk. I know she's watching right now. I know this because when I mentioned to her that you were going to be on, she said what time. I said, the show is at noon every single day, so
Right.
it would take you coming on for her to watch, which I fully support. Is she aware that there is a Spotify list?
I don't know. No, I don't think so, because
She
I
is
just got
now.
an email about it yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so
So
she is now.
I think it'll help. I mean, why not?
Well, I was just going to say that I guarantee you there will not be a time now that we leave the house where that Spotify list won't be playing, which is actually really cool because it reminds me of our old dog Madison, and when we got her, and then when we lived in St. Louis before we moved here 12 years ago, uh, she used to always put on, not the dog, my wife, used to put on smooth jazz. Uh,
Hey,
and I don't know if it helped or not, but it was part of our routine, and I'm assuming that our dog liked it too. So hey, you never know with these things.
it's really fascinating research because we use it a lot with our fear-free sort of low stress handling of our pets now, and when they come in the clinic, and that music can play in the background and is actually scientifically proven to help reduce heart rates and stress response. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I want to get back to something that I was talking to you about early in the episode, and that was all the walks for
Yeah.
dogs, because now we have a couple things going on. Assuming those walks continue, the heat is coming. I mean, we saw that yesterday. We're seeing
Right.
that today, certainly here in Kansas City. So I think we all know that, right? I mean, if you're going to go walk your dogs or run your
Right.
dogs, they've got to be well hydrated. They'll let you know about that. They'll go right to the toilet to let you know that if that's what they have to do. But you talked about the pads and all of that. If they are being over exercised, or I don't know if
Mhm.
if that's even the right term, over exercised, what can pet owners do just to sort of look out for those dogs, especially if they're being walked as often as they are?
Yeah, and there's a couple things. One, you mentioned heat, and heat stress is excessive panting, not recovering when you get home. Dogs have a higher temperature than us, so you can't really feel a dog and feel if they have a fever or not. So, but any temperature over 102 after they've been out walking is concerning, and you have to really watch. If you have a dog that has a squish nose, so a pug, a bulldog, do not exercise them when it's 90 degrees out. They
Mm,
just can't handle it. They can't cool themselves down enough. So the other thing is hot pavement. If you're out walking in the grass on a hot day, they can sort of let you know when they're getting overheated. But on the pavement, they won't necessarily feel it till after they have
mm,
some significant pad burns. And so if you can't hold your hand on the pavement for 30 seconds, don't take your dog for a walk on the pavement or even the sidewalk because they get really hot. Same with these synthetic decks are getting really hot in the sun. So everyone's sitting outside and relaxing. Make sure your pets are safe on the deck as well. Um, with exercise, just like with us, build up to it. say you've had to work a ton, and now that you're, say, in healthcare, and now you finally are having a moment to breathe again, and you go back to exercise, and your pets start slow, work them up like you would if you were returning to exercise. But I think that's the biggest thing, is just making sure they have plenty of water, really pay attention to their physical signs. And if they're not recovering within 20, 30 minutes of being home, talk to your vet, because it may be that there's some underlying health condition, or they're just not tolerating that heat well.
No, that makes sense. And I don't know that I know that we are always aware of, okay, they look like they're panting too much, or
Right.
they're worn out, but I don't know that I've ever thought about it like, yeah, I wouldn't suddenly go out and say, if I've been inactive for a long time, let me go run 3 miles, which, by the
Right.
way, isn't going to happen. I'm not going to do that
You
because
and
I'm
me
not going
both.
to make it. But we don't, yeah, yes. But, at the same time, we don't necessarily think that way about our pet. Oh, let's just take him
Well,
for
we
a
think
walk. And so,
we think
right,
they're natural athletes,
right.
and they can be, but we've sort of made them couch potatoes too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of dogs who are bred to move all day, but our lifestyles, especially here in the States, just aren't conducive to that. Very few people are out working all day with their dog by their sides, trotting around all the time.
Yeah.
So, the big thing is work up slow. Make sure if you notice any limping that lasts longer than 24 hours, get to your vet. Your vet can help walk you through that and take a look and make sure there's no injuries, or give them the supportive care they need to keep moving.
a, a little bit of a few non-pet related questions, and they're more business questions, but
Okay.
I think one of the absolute most important aspects during this pandemic for any company, or for any of us, whatever we do, I mean, that would be true with the schools and the kids, is communication. And
Right.
of course, you're in the communication business anyway. I mean, there's not a pet
Without a
owner
doubt.
that doesn't want to feel like they have that needs to feel like they have the ability to get a hold of you when they need to.
Right.
That obviously becomes more difficult at a time. You could send out every email, every newsletter, and all of those type of things. Doesn't mean we're all going to read them, unfortunately.
Right.
But life is different now, and then it will
Oh,
be
for sure.
different, and it may be different again in the fall. Keep saying let's get back to to the norm. I don't know that the old norm will ever be the same. I think there'll be aspects of it. So, what have been the biggest challenges or strategies, at least for you, in terms of staying connected? Because the other thing that and all business owners can attest to this, I think, is that their clients or the people they deal with are at different levels right now, and so not
Oh, gosh,
everybody's
yes.
on the same page. What have the challenges been of that?
Well, I think one of the big things is that we've talked as a staff about making sure that every single person that's coming up to our door is going through something. There's not a single person who's not affected by this, whether they've lost a family member, whether they've lost their job, whether they just worry about the social isolation. They might have some mental health challenges. We just don't know that about our clients. So everyone's trying to be super patient, very kind and gentle, which we do
Mm-hmm.
normally, but even more so.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the harder things for me is when you're talking over the phone, I'm not seeing the questioning eyes or the pursing of the lips that might tell me this person isn't understanding. You never want to talk down to someone, but you
Mm-hmm.
also want to make sure that you're talking at a level that they understand. And I can describe things 1,000 ways. I mean, you've heard my stories, they go on forever. So I can talk to the wall, but I want to always make sure my clients understand my recommendations. And that's really hard to do over the phone. I'd say that's been one of my personal biggest challenges, is that, am I educating my clients appropriately? Are they taking the initiative to ask that next question, or are they feeling intimidated by it all? And then, of course, I'm doing my Facebook videos, and I'm doing lots of emails and trying to send out those email newsletters to let people know. But as you mentioned, I mean, not everybody reads them or thinks that they still apply,
Mm-hmm.
because it's been a week and the city's opening, but we're not. And that's a tough. You don't want to over communicate where everyone's totally annoyed by you,
Yeah.
but you also don't want to leave people hanging.
Yeah, you almost need like two sets of groups, or it's even more than
Right.
two, right? It's not as
10
simple as,
sets somewhere
yeah,
on
those that want and those that don't, those that want a little, those that want more. I mean, it's
right.
that's one of the hard parts. I'm kind of trying to navigate that myself, is newsletters or bulletins. Like, how
Right.
often do you get them? I think there's probably a difference between when you are assigned them without realizing it versus
Right.
whether you sign up for it, and those that sign up for it may want it a little bit more, so that there's a give and take there. In an ideal world, and I just don't know how to do this, it's a lot easier for me talking and networking with people to just jump on a Zoom call. In an ideal world, they could have that
Right.
call with you for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes via Zoom, but not everybody has the same connections. Not everybody's using the same services. And I mean, even I
Right.
messed up a call this morning because one Zoom room went out, and the person I was supposed to talk to thought it was one, and I thought it was another. I was wrong. But so it's hard to get on the same page with all of this stuff. And then I suppose that there's also the challenge for you. And look, you know this better than me. You have to deal with a lot of challenging and difficult and emotional situations,
Right.
that it's what makes you, among all of your skills and abilities as a veterinarian, so good, is having that that bedside manner. And that's probably a little bit tougher to do when you have to stand 6 feet apart, or you maybe can't put an arm around someone or do the type of things you were
Right.
doing before. How have you adjusted to that safety versus emotion?
It's been tough, and just making sure that I have the time to talk on the phone with my clients, instead of picking up a phone and doing a quick phone call, I'm making sure that it's quiet, that I have full focus on people that we're having difficult conversations with. And it's happening daily. It's been really hard on my staff, when we're talking about end of life care and we're talking about difficult diagnoses and things. It's very stressful for my staff to not have that face to face compassionate, because that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, is having
Mm-hmm.
that touch, and not like creepy touch, but like having that emotional relationship with our clients to help them through these times. And we've been through that with a senior dog with you, and how much I value that interaction with my
Mm-hmm.
clients to make sure that everyone's taken care of. And it's been tough. And plus you have that elemental stress of these clients are on the verge as it is, and now you're having a difficult conversation with them. So we just keep trying to pivot, has been one of my pivot and flex. We're
Yeah.
just kind of trying to figure out what's best for every client. But we have had a couple situations where, we just, they, at the end of the day, you're worried about how that client perceived what happened because you just couldn't have that face to face interaction.
Yeah. And I mean, you already knew this to begin with going into the pandemic. Every single client is different. We're all
Oh,
wired
yeah,
differently. We all have different needs.
for
We all have
sure.
different pets. But I think, and I think this is what you're saying, that's been exaggerated. That's been taken to another level
Oh, yeah,
because everyone is so, that they have that heightened awareness right now, and everybody is
right.
maybe not as much today as, certainly not as much today as 2 months ago or even a month ago, but there's still so much uncertainty out there, and that has people on edge.
Well, and people really want to push back to normal quickly, and you just can't. And for me, I'm such a science-based person that I need science to start making changes. I'm not going to make changes just because
Yeah.
some politician somewhere made a choice. And so I'm making changes based on CDC and WHO and my professional organization's recommendations. And that's really hard for people because they don't want, science contradicts what we want emotionally right now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really difficult for people. And it's hard to bridge that gap for people.
Yeah. Couple final things before we go. Got a
Yeah.
question in from Brett Parsons, and I know Brett watches the podcast a lot, so I appreciate that. Do you recommend any good resources for new pet parents? I like that. We always hear about new parents, right? It's hard for me to think about being a new pet parent because I don't think we've been pet owners now for about 20 years, but I remember,
Right.
sort of remember back to when we had our first dog Madison, and then that is a little bit stressful, and you're learning
Yeah.
as you go. I always tell people, if possible, if you're going to have kids at some point, do the pet thing first. It's a great
To
initiation into
transition,
being a
step
parent.
up.
But it's a great question. Any good resources for new pet parents?
I think one of the first things is to find a veterinarian that fits your personality. And I've had people who I've helped find a different clinic because they need a different level of handholding or have a different philosophy. And that's great. I'll help hook you up with the right person because I think that's so critical. So trust your veterinarian over the pet store clerk. there's good information to be had at pet stores and with trainers, but always go with, I always recommend the doctor first because our training is so much more in depth. And then I think there's some great resources out there, like Ohio State University has a fabulous indoor pet initiative. So it talks about pet care and managing stress and things like that. And so regardless, always verify the source. Unfortunately, so many of our pet resource pages are sponsored by a company who is selling something. And so always read those. There's good information in there, but always read them with a little hinge of doubt, and then check with somebody who's either a certified trainer, a veterinarian. And there's some veterinarians in town that really work with behavior versus nutrition versus this. And we all have our strengths. So that's my recommendation. It is a great question.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and I'll keep saying this, not just true of the relationships that you have with your clients, but and how each client is different. Every one of these pets are different. And so, what worked for us with our first dog might not have worked with the second. I mean, how unique and unique and strange our second dog is, but very smart. We know that one. So yeah, they're all different. And I will say for us that as we were able to, this is this is a whole nother discussion, but it gets back to the mental side of pets. I mean, I remember when we got Maggie and we brought in a trainer, and just the explaining of who's the alpha male or female in this case, and who wants to lead, and how stressed out those pets can be when they're in a role that they don't want to be in, because they'll do it, right? Especially the dogs, they'll do whatever role you ask of them, but it might not be the right one. And I think there's a lot of that's going on even right now too, with everything we've talked about with these different times.
Stress in pets is very different than stress in humans. What you think is stressful is very different from what your dog thinks is stressful. Your dog thinks it's stressful that the postman comes up to the front door every day. That's somebody violating their space, and we don't even think about it. So, I think having sometimes an outside source take a look in with like a good trainer like you had, or your veterinarian, or, behaviorist or something, they can solve a problem that you don't even perceive, because the pack mentality and, it's all different.
Well, I know one issue of stress, I don't know for who more, is getting baseball back and going. Because I believe, true or false, you might have said something about a week ago. When are you going back to work so I can hang out with your wife more?
Right. Well, and watch you on TV. Like, my world is so lonely at night because I don't like watching a lot of junky TV. So I have your broadcast on every day. It's on. It's crazy. So I'm missing baseball in a big way.
Yeah, I think most of us are, and hopefully next month we'll see. It doesn't, that's a whole nother discussion too. It doesn't feel like, based on the reports and what's out in the media, that's happening, but my belief and what I hear on the inside is it should. No guarantees, obviously. So hopefully next month. And if it doesn't happen, you're going to see me here in the neighborhood more than anybody wants me to be here. But but my dogs will be happy. So there's at least that much. If anyone wants to get a hold of Dr. Libby, and I love also that you said that, look, if you're not the right fit, you'll know someone that is. I certainly would recommend that everybody go to Libby's clinic, Martin City Animal Hospital. But there are obviously a lot of good choices here in town. Ultimately, it's about taking care of your pets. And so certainly people can go to the website, martincityanimalhospital.com. Is that the best way to get a hold of you guys? Or
and through our Facebook page as well, because we're pretty active on Facebook. The big thing is be patient. If you're calling us right now, it's going to be a few weeks before we can get anyone in, because we've just been so busy trying to catch up from the limited services. And I know everyone in town is feeling that way. So be patient with your veterinarian. If you're calling your vet clinic and they're saying hold tight, be patient, because all of us are short staffed. Many of us have kids who are at home because of coronavirus. They can't go to daycare, so an employee has to be home. And so just be really patient with your clinics right now. Everyone's been working their tushes off since. None of us have stayed home. None of us have had a day off since this started. And so, if you're frustrated with your clinic because of coronavirus, you're going to have the same frustration all around town, because we're all super swamped. And want to take care of everyone to the best of our abilities. But yeah, the website, you can send, requests in through there, or our Facebook page, either one.
Good information to have. Last question.
Yeah.
Any final advice you could give to pet owners as some of those little things come up and there is a bit of that logjam as you all catch up? What are some of those things that maybe we can do for ourselves? Because I know we always prefer that the experts do them. You're not asking any of us to perform surgery or to pull the string out of the cat's mouth or behind. That leave that to the professionals. But what are some things? I mean, you talked about monitoring the heat and keeping them hydrated and all that. Are there some self-care type of things that we can do as pet owners?
Well, I'd say the big thing is keep it really simple on food and drink, especially with all the stress around and all the animals, the wild animals that are out moving around and leaving behind presents for our pets. But any diarrhea that lasts 24 hours, vomiting that lasts 24 hours, see your veterinarian. Same with any limping. But the big thing is if they start limping, look at the feet. Do you see an injury? Do you see a cracked toenail? Are you seeing inappropriate behavior? Keep track of what's going on so when you come in, we can get good information. But the bigger thing is just be aware of eating, drinking, weight loss. Those things are all good early red flags for clients to catch at home. But like I said, good quality nutrition, clean water, tender loving care goes a long way with these guys.
All right, great advice. Again, I'll pop it up. You can find out more, martincityanimalhospital.com, or just jump on the Facebook and like their Facebook page. A lot of great resources, information. I can't recommend Dr. Libby and her staff enough. Glad you did this. I know that you have a lot going on and you're busy with the nonstop stuff at the clinic. So I'm glad you had a few moments to share with your friend. And
Joel, for you, anything.
Oh, stop it. Oh, stop it. All right, Libby, thank you. Appreciate it. And I'm sure I'll see you in the neighborhood later.
Sounds good. Have a great day.
All right, that is Dr. Libby Robertson, Martin City Animal Hospital. Nice way to end the week there with some advice that I think will apply to all pet owners out there. Big thanks once again, and a recommendation to my friends at JJ's Wine and Spirits, southwest corner of College and Antioch. Great service. They know their stuff. So need a good bottle of wine, they'll recommend it. Need a good whiskey? Yes, always. They'll recommend that too. So check them out. They also have a Facebook page, JJ's Wine and Spirits. So I would encourage you to look at that. Social media at KC Cattle Company or the website. They have restocked up on that Wagyu beef today. So I recommend that you go there right now and check it out. They deliver down to Kansas City. They'll drive it down from Weston, Missouri on Fridays. They also deliver to all 50 states. Veteran owned and operated. So great company to support, and the product is absolutely spectacular. And thanks to everyone over at Enterprise Bank and Trust. Proud to have that partnership with all of you. Enterprise Bank and Trust, hashtag no stopping you. 53 episodes down. We hit the 50 episode mark this week. So we'll get into the mid-50s next week. Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, is my guest. I believe that's Monday. These days tend to run together, so let me just check the good old calendar before I promise what I can't deliver. Yes, Bob is on Monday. And then a return engagement for Dr. Allison Edwards, and she's going to talk about some new developments of what they're doing, along with another friend, Jay Austin, in the medical community with COVID. So thanks. I got to just give a little shout out here to Rich Goldberg, who said informative episode. I just brought it up because I've known Rich for 30-something years. Now, that math doesn't really work out, right? Because two Goldbergs, I'm not 30 years old. We're not related, but we did go to high school together. And so I appreciate Rich watching from up in Chicago. Thanks again to Enterprise Bank and Trust. Have a great weekend, everyone. Hope you get a chance to enjoy it a little bit. And thanks for watching Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust.